Please rise with Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a prayer, please. We'll get it there. Dear God, we thank you for this day, for all the stuff you provide us. We thank you for the moisture that we've had. We thank you for the crops growing. We thank you for these leaders who are willing to serve and help this community be the best that it can be. It's always tough decisions to make, and so they're asking for your guidance and your help into making the right choices. We appreciate the citizens who are concerned about their community and are willing to turn out and to offer their suggestions as well. Continue to guide and direct these leaders, and so that we can continue to grow as a community and help the citizens to make the best choices that they can to take care of all the resources that you've given us, and to support these decisions, whether they approve of them or not. Thank you again for all you do for us, for our Lord Jesus Christ, and guide and direct us to continue to help us be faithful. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Meeting to order, and a roll call.
Present. White.
Present.
Robinson.
Present.
Ann Morrison.
Present.
Board Member Gardner is absent. We have a quorum for the City Council meeting. It is 5:03 p.m.
Councilman Turner has to be excused. He couldn't get here. He could make some connections on a flight. Motion to excuse him. So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
We have all ayes. Motion carries.
As required by state law, the city of Kimball has available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act positions in the meeting room. Agenda items may be moved up or down on the agenda at the discretion of the mayor. Additions may not be made to this agenda less than 24 hours before the beginning of the meeting, unless they're considered under this section of the agenda and the council determines matter requires emergency action. We have none of those. There's going to be a slight change in the current business agenda. We're going to move Jamie Bright up right after the audit review. Okay, first thing on is the consent agenda items. We have the minutes, claims, financials. You can either those as a group or you can do it individually. Council, please get that and make your well known.
Motion to approve consent agenda items.
Is there a second? Second. Please vote.
All ayes. Motion carries.
Okay. Thing we do is go to current business. There are no resolutions for current business, and we will have a review of our 2024 audit by Michael Kovac of AMGL CPA.
Good evening. So I'm going to start with the bound data report. I think you guys all have a copy of that in front of you. I'm not going to go through all of it, obviously. Just going to have some of the highlights. If any questions when I'm going through, just go ahead and ask. And I will give you the page number so you can kind of follow along with me. Starting on page 2, the independent auditor's report. Underneath the opinions paragraph, we got an unmodified opinion. Because everything was presented fairly, there's no material misstatements. That's the type of opinion that we want to have each year, obviously. Jumping back to page 11. At the bottom there, we have a list of the major capital asset events for the year. The city's got a lot going on. We spent a lot of dollars on capital outlay. We have a list of the ones over 25,000. I'll just go through some of the bigger ones. We spent about 92,000 on golf course sprinklers, 172,000 on the golf course irrigation well, 160,000 on some playground equipment. Then on the next page, about 110,000 on the library roof, 840,000 on the electric generation project, 243,000 on the wastewater treatment plant project. Like I said, we had a lot going on this year, and we're continuing to grow the city. On the top of page 13, we have a table of the city's outstanding debt. At September 30th of 24, the city had 5.9 million of debt compared to 3.4 million a year ago. So our debt increased by about 2.5 million or 73%. And that's going to be due to the electric generation project bonds and then the loan to some golf course improvements and police equipment. Page 14 is in the actual financial statements for the city. So everything here is going to be presented on the accrual basis. We're showing all the cash, receivables, capital assets, all the liabilities we reported. The first column, your government activities. These are the tax-supported funds. They include the general, street, golf, economic development bond, and there's a couple other smaller funds in there. They had total assets about 4.6 million. Total liabilities of just over 400,000. So we had total net position or equity about 4.2 million. Second column, the business activities include the electric, water, sewer, trash, and the landfill funds. They had total assets of about 17.9 million, just over $7 million of liability. So total net position was 10,850,000. And then the column on the right side is going to be the component unit. That's your airport authority. They had total assets of about 6.2 million. The liabilities is about 600,000, so about 5.6 million of net position. Page 15, the revenue and expenses for the city. The third line from the bottom on the right side shows the change in net position. That's basically going to be the net income or loss for the year. The government activities decreased 500,000. Business type activities increased 936,000, and the airport was down 324,000. Page 16 is the balance sheet for those individual governmental funds. These are all going to be reported on the modified cash basis, so we don't have any receivables. It's basically just going to be cash, no liability reported. So the general fund had total assets of 206,000. We had about 210,000 of cash that was restricted for those are the ARPA funds that we spent them, but we hadn't gotten them transferred to the right department yet. So on the unassigned is actually what we had for basically operating cash in that general fund. It was a deficit of $3,500. Basically means we have no cash reserves in our general fund at the end of last year. Street fund had 465,000 cash, all restricted for street projects. Golf fund had a deficit cash balance of 145,000. Economic development had 311,000 of cash. Bond fund had 650,000 of cash. And then the other governmental funds include the fire equipment fund, Keno, Handyman, community development, and the fines and fees. They had a total of about 244,000 cash in those funds. Page 18 is the revenue and expenses for the governmental funds. Third line from the bottom shows the increase or decrease. General fund decreased 483,000. That's just due to the 499,000 of capital outlay that we spent. If you take that out, and we finished out about 135,000. A lot of that went to the golf as our local match there. Resulted in the $485,000 decrease. Street fund decreased 50,000. Golf fund decreased 104,000. Economic development decreased 64,000, and then those other funds decreased 110,000. So across the board, every fund did decrease their fund balances, which means they decreased their cash reserves. Page 20 is the balance sheet for the utility funds. We're back on the accrual basis, so we're going to have all the receivables, payables, everything should be reported here. The electric fund had about 13.3 million of total assets. 8.7 million of that was cash. About 3.5 million of that was restricted CDs or bond proceeds that we hadn't spent yet. About 4.9 million of liabilities, so I had 8.3 million of net position. Water fund had 1,365,000 of total assets. Only about 20,000 of that was cash, was actual cash reserves. So I have very little cash in the water fund. 135,000 of liabilities, about 1.2 million of net position. Sewer fund had 686,000 of total assets. It actually had a cash deficit of 181,000. 26,000 of liabilities, so 660,000 of net position. Trash fund had 467,000 of total assets. 287,000 of that was cash. $4,100 of liabilities, so 463,000 of equity. And then the landfill fund had about 2.1 million of total assets. Its operating cash was a deficit of 856,000. We have about 1.6 million set aside for closure and post-closure costs that we're required to have. Total liabilities are just under 2 million, so we only had 126,000 of equity there. And then your internal service fund, which is basically for health insurance, we had 512,000 of cash, and that's going to be, like I said, all set aside for the health insurance. Page 21 shows the revenue expenses for the utility funds. Electric fund increased 578,000. Water fund increased 136,000. Sewer increased 152,000. Trash increased 39,000. The landfill increased 29,000. So we did have pretty good growth across the board on all the utility funds. Page 22 is a statement of cash flows. Halfway down, it's indented, shows the increase and decrease in cash and cash equivalents. The electric fund increased about 1.6 million. That's just going to be due to the bonds that we had issued that we hadn't spent. The water fund increases cash reserves by $2,500. Sewer fund was up about 32,000. Trash fund up $6,200, and then landfill decreased about 38,000. So really, not much change in the cash other than those bonds that we issued in the electric fund. That's all I'm going to cover out of the bound report. Any questions on any of that so far?
Or do you feel we're on the right direction on the business side? Or do we still have ways to go?
As far as like cash reserves, or good cash reserves on those utility funds. And to me, it looks like the rates are probably, when I get to my benchmarking, we'll have some more information on those rates. But to me, it looks like the utility funds are pretty in decent shape. Your general fund is the one that I'm really concerned about. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. So in addition to the actual financial statements, there's a couple letters to management. One says we don't have segregation of duties. We're just never going to get rid of that comment. It's just not feasible for a city our size to have the actual number of accounting staff that we would need to have to split those duties up. We do split them up the best that we can with the staff that we do have, and the staff does a good job. But there's always going to be stuff that gets handled by one person more than it should. You guys as a council, mayor, just need to continue with the involvement. My experience with you is we've always done a good job of that. So just keep that up, because you guys are responsible for the actual financial condition of the city. So then there was a 4-page letter. I'm just going to skip to the last page of that. This is where we list any of our audit findings or recommendations. I have one comment. I always recommend just monitoring those utility rates. Once you get behind on those, it's hard to get caught up. So I remind all of my audit clients, always be watching those. I'm not saying we need to necessarily increase rates, but just always be watching those. When you go through the budget process, I think we've always done a pretty good job of that. We just continue to do that. Otherwise, to have one comment is, and it's just a kind of a generic one that I leave in all of my audits, is really good. The books are in good shape. Staff does a good job. It was a pretty clean audit for us. The last thing I'm going to go over is a little 2-page benchmarking that I handed out prior to the meeting. So our firm does 80 to 85 audits for cities and villages across the state. We're by far the largest municipal auditor in the state. The So what we do, since we have a lot of data at our disposal, is we take those audits, split them in different population groups, and then just compare you to different cities your size. So you're going to be in the 1,000 to 3,000 population range. The average population for cities in that group is going to be 1,563. Your population is 2,290, so we're a little bit on the larger side of that group. On the second line there, the valuation. The average valuation for cities in that group is going to be about 116 million. On a per capita basis or per person in town, it's about 74,000. City of Kimball's valuation was 147 million. On a per capita basis was 64,000. So our valuation is a little bit lower than most cities our size. Not too far off, but just a little bit lower. So number one, the unrestricted net position versus total net position basically tells us how much of the city's resources are available for some normal day-to-day operations and programs of the city. For the government-wide or the city as a whole, we recommend 35%. This year we're at 38.8%, down just a little bit from 38.9% a year ago. We've kind of gone down each of the last 3 or 4 years. We are still above what we would recommend. And that's mostly going to be due to the fact that our business activities or the utility funds do have really good cash reserves. So we just want to make sure that on those governmental activities that we kind of start building those back up. So that second line, the governmental activities, we recommend 25%. This year we're at 8.6%, 21.2 a year ago, so a big decrease there this year. A lot of that's going to be in the general fund, spending down that cash. We just got to figure out how to build some cash reserves back in that general fund because I mentioned earlier, it actually has a deficit of its operating cash. All the cash that was in that fund is basically restricted for those ARPA funds. For those business type activities or the utility funds, we recommend 40%. We're at 50.4 this year, up from 47.3 a year ago, so we're in good shape there. Number two, the top 4 sources of revenue for just the governmental activities. Your biggest revenue source is going to be the sales tax. Typical city your size gets $306 per capita. We're at 309 this year. A year ago, we were at 322. So a little bit of a decrease from a year ago, but we're basically right in line with the typical city our size on the sales tax revenue. Property taxes, the average is $299 per capita. We're at $232 this year, up from $224 a year ago. State allocation, the average is $221. We're at $287. A year ago, we were at $277. We'll have some more detail on that here in a little bit. And then the charges for services, the average is $95 per capita. We're at $181, up from $179 a year ago. I think you guys are going to be a little bit higher there just because of the golf course. Like we do have a lot of revenue that does come in to that golf course. They have a lot of charges there. Number 3 gets in the detail for the state allocations. We list the 2 biggest ones here. The highway allocation or the street funding. Typical city your size has $160 per capita. We're at $185 this year, up from $179 a year ago. So we are a fair amount above average on our street funding that we receive. The equalization is basically state aid to kind of equalize property taxes. It's based on the formula using population, valuation, and then your property tax levy. So because our valuation is a little bit below average, we do qualify for more aid. So the typical city your size gets $61 in equalization. We're at $81 this year, up from $76 a year ago. Number 4 looks at the governmental spending. So it excludes capital outlay and debt, so it's just going to be the operating expenses. For the admin, the average is $160 per capita. We're at $89 this year. A year ago, we were at $148. We had just a bunch of additional costs there. So we've never been above that. We're right around that $80 in the past. So we're quite a bit below average on those admin costs. We do a good job of getting those costs allocated across the different departments, basically. Police, the average is $140 per capita. We were at $353 this year, up from $294 a year ago. 22, we were at $237. So we've had some really big increases in the police spending in the last couple of years, and we've always been really quite a bit above the average spending there. Fire, the average is 25. We're at 21 this year. Park, the average is 60. We're at $46. Pool, the average is $40. We're at 65. The event center, we don't have anymore. Library, the average is $65. We're at 107, down from $116 a year ago. Fitness center, we don't have anymore. And then the cemetery, the average is 25. This year we were 82. So we've done a good job of keeping those admin costs down. We do have a few other departments. Like I said, the police has always been quite a bit above the average spending. And then you guys, your library and your cemetery, you're going to also be quite a bit above average. Number 5 looks at the outstanding GO debt versus valuation. The city of Kimball really doesn't have a lot of GO debt. The debt we do have is going to be mostly in these utility funds through the revenue bonds. So anything below 3% is going to be excellent. We're at 0.28% this year, so we're in great shape on that. Number 6, the unassigned fund balance compared to general fund expenditures. Look at just the general fund and how much of those resources are available for the day-to-day operations and programs that we provide. So we recommend 30%. Each of the last 2 years, we've been at 0%. 22, we were at 19%. 21, we were at 45%. We've basically spent down that general fund to no cash reserves, so we're at 0. That's where we need to work on. That general fund is stop spend, or we don't want to go down anymore because we're already at deficit, so we got to try and build those cash reserves back up somehow. Number 7 on the next page. We recommend having 12 months of street expense and reserve for the street fund. This year we're at 9.9. I'm down from 11.2 a year ago. We've got pretty good cash reserves in the street fund. Number 8 looks at the property tax levies. So the typical city in the state, your size is going to have a 40-cent general levy. Ours is 40.6. Typical city your size also has an 11-cent debt service levy. We haven't had one for the last 5 years. So when we look at the total property tax levy, we're about 10.5 cents below state average for cities our size. If you look at your levy, you go back to 21, we were at 42.5 cents. And it's we've gone down a little bit. We did have a little bit of an increase from 23 to 24, but we've done a good job of keeping that property tax levy pretty low. Whether or not that was a great idea with the general fund cash reserves being basically nothing, probably, who knows? We just need to consider that this next go around in the budget and see if we can get some more cash in that general fund. Number 9, the net depreciable capital assets compared to original cost basically tells us how old the equipment and infrastructure are. The lower these percentages get, the more important it is that we have cash reserve to maintain those assets and then potentially replace those. So we recommend staying above 35%. Your government activities are at 59% this year, so we're in good shape there. We won't recommend any cash reserves. Business type, we're at 28.9, down from 30.6 a year ago. So we will have some reserves that we recommend for equipment replacement. We look at those cash reserves. Number 10 looks at the utility rate. So when we compare the net operating income versus the total operating or the total utility charges, we recommend about a 15% return on the electric, water, sewer, and trash. That 15% return should generate cash flow for operations, equipment replacement, debt service. This year, the electric fund was at 17.3%, and a year ago was actually a deficit of 3.7%. So you had quite a bit of improvement there. So we're actually above what we'd recommend there. Water fund this year was 15.1%. A year ago was a deficit of 21%. So a lot of improvement there, right on what we would recommend. Sewer fund this year was 25.5%. A year ago was negative 34%. Again, a lot of improvement, quite a bit above what we recommend. Based on those cash reserves, that 25% return is probably good, so we can kind of build up those reserves. Kind of same thing on that water, where it has a very little cash reserve. We need to try and build those up too. Sewer fund, the trash fund was a 16% return this year, and 23 was 10.8%, so some improvement there. And then the landfill fund, we recommend a 10% return. This year was a negative 5%. 23 was a negative 91%. That negative 5% this year is the best of the 5 years that we show. We've had a lot of improvement there. It has such a big operating cash deficit. Landfill funds are hard to build cash reserves and maintaining those. Pretty much all the cash in that fund typically ends up in that closure, post-closure costs. So we just need to watch the operating costs there and try and get rid of that cash deficit if we can on the operations. Number 11 looks at the debt coverage ratio. Basically tells us the utility ratio is set high enough to actually service the debt. So a bonding company would want to see this be at least 1.5 or higher. The electric fund this year was 1.77. Water fund was 5.6. Sewer was all the way up to 17.8. So those are all in good shape. And then that landfill fund was 0.88. Again, so that suggests maybe an increase in those landfill rates to try and build up some reserves so we can actually pay that debt out of the revenue there. Last one, number 12, looks at the cash reserves. So for just the general fund, for operating cash, we recommend 875,000 of reserves. We haven't had any actual cash reserves each of the last 2 years. If you go back to 21, we had 537,000. That was probably the most cash we've had in there for several years. We basically spent that down to nothing. I don't want to continue to see go backwards in that utility or the general fund where we just keep creating a bigger deficit there. So that's where we got to work on at least staying where we're at and then trying to build up some reserves there as we go through this next budget cycle. For the business type activities, recommend about 2.3 million for operations, 5.1 million is going to be the restricted for the unspent bond proceeds. We recommended $3.6 million for equipment replacement. So total cash reserves of just over 11 million. You guys had 9.5 million this year. When you get rid of that equipment replacement reserves at 3.6 million, when you look at just the operating and the restricted, the ones that are the most important ones, we do have really good cash reserves in those utility funds. It's basically all in that electric department is pretty much where all the utility cash is. Except the water has virtually no reserves, sewer has limited, trash has decent, and then the landfill has none. We kind of got to work on building reserves in those different departments. But for you guys, with the utility rates where they're at, I think those the utility funds that are on the right track. It's just that general fund to me is the big spot guy, and I'm trying to get some cash reserves in that department. As mentioned earlier, the audit went smooth. Staff does a good job. I enjoy working with all of them. So, any questions?
So, any questions? How do we build up that reserve?
You can't really. I mean, you could raise property taxes going through the change in the property tax laws. I don't know what that looks like quite yet for this year. So it's just got to come down to the spending, where we just have to basically really watch that spending. And we spent a lot on capital outlay this year. The general fund, we spent 500,000 on capital outlay, and just that general fund. A lot of that was in the police. It's that kind of stuff that we just have to watch that spending. Like I said, it's hard to. You can't just increase your revenue because it's tax dollars. So it really just has to come down to watching that spending. You go through the budget. Be really careful on what we budget for. I mean, that's pretty much where it comes down, is just the spending.
Some of that was catch up, I think. Now that we lost a well at the golf course.
Yeah, and I understand that sometimes that stuff happens, and just going forward, then maybe you just have to be a little more careful on what we approve for spending out there. And it's not just that department; it's across the board.
Right. So thank you.
Yep.
Comes from the council. It seems like we either need to attract new business. We're not going to raise property taxes, but attract new business or have fewer emergencies that we had to go after some capital dollars like we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep. Very much. All right. Next item on the agenda, then we will discuss and approve a free crosswalk on Webster Street. Kimball activities of Kimball Active Living. Jamie Bright.
Erin Jeffries from the hospital is also joining me. So you have seen our crosswalk designs in the past. Kimball Health Services is also interested in putting one in between the hospital and the employee parking lot. I marked a large area on the map, but I talked to Erin and she narrowed it down a little bit. It's kind of where that mark on the street is. That you can see under the highlighted area just below that car. It would go across our employee parking to the emergency department. And The design that the employees voted on as their favorite was this top one, which we think is doable. The hospital is going to supply the paint and help us with labor. And they plan to refresh it every year. This is a brand new crosswalk. There's not currently one there, so that's something you all have to approve as well as the design.
Okay. Any comment on that, Matt? I like the top one.
It looks really nice.
If we were gonna put a crosswalk by the hospital, I'd go with the second one, but
I think it fits with your logo theme, right?
Yeah. The top one is more our colors of our new logo, and then it has the K in the middle for Kimball.
I think it's a good one. It's just where we put it if we came down to it. But yeah, I appreciate that. I did like the top one though. Any other comment?
Do we need to make a motion to approve this or? Yes, yeah, I do. Okay. Make a motion, we approve it.
Is there a second? Please vote.
Have all ayes, motion carries.
Well, perfect, thank you.
Item on the agenda is discussion on the design, vision, community engagement. Steve Hardy and Nat Bisek of the University of Nebraska College of Agriculture. And that will be Zoom.
Steve Hardy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
We can hear you just fine. Go ahead. To share your screen or anything?
Yes.
Okay, let me make a couple changes here real quick. Okay, you're going to rejoin as a panelist, so you have authority to share your screen. You'll see a change in just a sec. I need you to unmute. There you are. I see you here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I think you're good.
Can you also invite Nate
I can.
or allow him to turn on the audio?
Nate, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you and I see your picture on the screen, so you guys should be good. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Okay. Do you want to share screen, Steve?
Okay, I think we're there.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect. Can you all see that?
We sure can.
can you see?
Okay, great. Well, hey, thank you all for having us this evening to chat through the projects that we did in Kimball last fall. And thank you all for letting that process happen as well. Those of you that participated with us, and a big thanks to Annette and to the mayor for having us in Kimball and letting us use Kimball as a case study for the studio. So to introduce us a little more, my name is Nate Bisek, and I'm a faculty member in interior design at UNL in the College of Architecture, and Steve Hardy is a faculty member in architecture in the college, and together we teach a collaborative fourth-year design studio at UNL. So this is senior architecture, interior design, and landscape architecture students. And we call the studio, and what we do with communities assist. So in the studio, students learn by working closely with project partners like Kimball last fall on real world projects. So we're really teaching students by engaging with Nebraska communities, helping communities think through potential projects. Often we like to come in 2 or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years before a community might be ready to engage professional architecture, interiors, landscape architecture, engineering services, to kind of break the ice on community conversations about these types of projects, as well as sort of familiarize with the process and so forth. Steve, I think you can go to the next slide there if you will. So in the studio last fall, in which we worked with Kimball, we attempted to address a number of design problems and projects with themes like designing for growth, neighborhood vision and character, culture building and placemaking, wellness, recreation, community service, or community security, excuse me, and then some adaptive reuse and revitalization. We had the studio look through the Kimball's comprehensive plan from last summer that was put together. So we had a good starting place in terms of design projects, design problems. But we also then made a trip to Kimball in September to have our students interact with community stakeholders through these kind of oblique site quality, character, and programming games and exercises that the students had designed for community stakeholders to play with them to get to some more information. The focus of these activities is to really discover information that helps our students understand and define the whole project. They work to uncover what's really important to a community and its stakeholders and what's important to a project, like the values. They work to understand which sites work best, or the pros and cons of particular locations. They also, in a traditional sense, kind of, as you can see, the police chief in the bottom left there, work to define the areas that a building or a project might require. But then they also work to uncover kind of desired qualities and psychological needs, if you will, of a project. These are quick, visual, kind of interactive games. I think a few of you probably played these with us in September when we visited. They're kind of fun to explore things through gaming rather than talking or a town hall sort of environment. The framing process, as we've come to call it, results in this kind of comprehensive framing booklet. I think we've shared that with Annette, and maybe a few of you have seen that. Which at the end of the process, we always tend to share with the community. We found that several of the community partners that we've worked with across the state have held onto these documents and eventually shared them with design professionals or developers down the line as projects get closer to being realized. And they've found that information is helpful in furthering community conversations as well around sort of, design objectives. So the framing document includes documentation of ideas like existing building stock and context, like downtown Kimball here. Next slide, there we go. And then analysis and proposals for existing sites and landscapes that might be looked at for development, such as the site and location studies here for Kimball's Community Safety Center. It also documents what we call benchmark projects, which are projects from projects of similar type in town, similar population, similar size or scale, and maybe similar budget, to illustrate the potentials of things that are happening in similar communities, like the safety center that you see here, or the benchmark projects for the wellness center like these. And then the document also carefully lays out all the required spaces, equipment, square footages necessary for different project types. So you can see the building activity program that our students put together here for Kimball's Wellness Center. And it's documented, both in written and graphic formats. And then lastly, our students attempt to distill information from those community conversations, the discovery sessions, and document the desired or aspirational qualities of any given project, whether that be, as you see here, like the architectural qualities or qualities of interior environments, or the types and qualities of outdoor spaces as well. So that's really, if you've had a chance to peruse and look through that framing document, that's really what that booklet is about. Now we're going to briefly share some of the design visions or studies that came out of the studio. We have two different proposals for the Wellness Center for Kimball, a Kimball Community Safety Center, an adaptive reuse proposal for the Wheat Growers Hotel, and then downtown revival or revitalization. So this is the first of two wellness center proposals from the studio. And often what we're trying to do in the studio is have students explore things from a range of possibilities. So the first of these two is centered and sited in the park as a way of exploring the this recreation and community gathering center as it might provide opportunities, enhance existing opportunities within the park or enhance existing functions with a new facility. And Steve, you can go to the next one. Yeah. And then one more slide, Steve. So they were thinking a lot about the park landscape around the building, how the building fits into the park, and then how interior spaces incorporate light or views out to the landscape. So again, these are just proposals, but in a vision study kind of approach that helps maybe spark some conversations about desired qualities, desired spaces, and so on. And then this is the second team that looked at placing the wellness center south of town near Horseshoe Hill, and therefore dealt with much different topography than in the park. And they're starting to think about rooftop opportunities and what it might mean for a community center to be a wellness center to be located on the southern outskirts of town. And again, a different location than the first wellness center, but also thinking about the exterior character of the building, how interior spaces might take advantage of light and views being on the south portion of town.
And so for the safety center proposal, we looked at a range of different site possibilities. It ended up a site emerged along Lincoln Highway across from Gotti Park and just slightly to the east. And with these kind of projects, we always like to explore possibilities of added functions that help the project maybe better serve the community. And in this case, there was a desire that the students heard from the community to not make a police station, but really a community safety center that increased the sort of interface of the public so that they felt comfortable, really comfortable with the functions within the safety center. And so these publicly accessible programs that are now part of the safety center form the sort of front face of the building. And it includes the main lobby in the sort of center of the building here, a small law enforcement exhibition gallery here to the right side of the building, as well as a community meeting room and an animal adoption shelter to the left side of the building and to the left of the main lobby. So the idea is that the proposal offers an inviting front entry to the public, using materials as well to reinforce this, things like heavy timber and glass for both a kind of warmth but also transparency, while using perforated sort of metal panels and concrete, precast concrete, to give a sense of authority and security to the project. So the bullpen area is typically the workspace for the law enforcement. And the students here reimagined it, which we see here with all the work desks in the offices. But they imagine it as a comfortable, approachable setting where when the community members do come into that space, they can engage and build trust with the officers. There were conversations about an indoor shooting range, not just for police training, but as a resource to the public, a place where residents can take part in firearm safety and training courses. And so these dual purpose ideas reflect how the studio's work is meant to spark conversations in the community, where different buildings, civic buildings, can serve, support, and connect the entire community. So when we visited Kimball, we were fortunate enough to be given a tour of the Wheat Groves Hotel by the current owner. And this wasn't really part of our original scope of operation. I think it was mentioned in passing. But when we saw such a remarkable historical building, it really demanded that it be part of the kind of vision process for adaptive reuse. So first, the students look at the restoration of the listed lobby to its original grandeur. And this was an important part of the exploration. And then the students themed or came up with concepts that really looked at wheat and the distilling process of wheat as a driving force for the rest of the design. So while the historical lobby here was really restored, the rest of the ground floor was probably the main level of the hotel that was looked to be modified to house additional functions, including a restaurant and a brewery, as well as a small bakery and another kind of retail space. An addition was put on the south side for the expanded outdoor dining area with the restaurant, and an excavated area was added to the north side to let light into the basement down below. So with its own patio and secondary entry, the basement level was then reconceived as a rentable venue within the building. And then the top level of the hotel was the lease changed and meant to remain as hotel rooms within this top level. So students found creative ways to reinvent original features of the building. So the old ventilation shafts that once tucked into the corners of the hotel rooms were transformed into light wells that channeled light through each floor of the building. And these glowing shafts then reconnected from the hotel rooms up above to the brewery at the street level, and even a visible trace into the basement below. Drawing inspiration from the building's rumored history, the students also introduced a small speakeasy into the basement. The entrance is discreetly tucked behind the brewery, and one of the light wells provides a subtle visual connection, which provides a peek from the hotel rooms up above to the hidden space below, which kind of had a nod to the building's kind of layered past. So the last project that we'll show today is the downtown revitalization, which is really a series of projects within one project. The goal of the revitalization of the downtown area was through a series of strategic focus on historic tourism and green city principles. The proposal is focused on a three-phase system grounded in what we'll explain as tactical, creative, and strategic that work in a sequence to help realize a vision for the downtown. And this staged approach is meant to increase the sort of time span for development and provides opportunities then for community support and chasing sort of funding opportunities, as well as trying to promote centralized living and to build the overall robustness of the downtown through this process. So the three levels or phases of proposed redevelopment, again, are tactical, strategic, and creative. The idea for a tactical, and these are spread throughout the downtown in different ways that we'll show in a second. The idea for tactical placemaking is to increase community engagement and allow for quick changes to occur at low budgets. While creative and strategic placemaking, those phases are more robust and transformative to the downtown. So examples of tactical placemaking we can see in the Nebraska Coffee Way Alley exploration include things like the introduction of murals that make a nod to the history of the city, the inclusion of additional park benches, looking at the uniform, making signage uniform, adding additional lighting, adding a little bit of vegetation, etc. So this phase really attempts to rally the community and show that changes are being made downtown, and again, provides the time to seek funding for additional phases. An example of the creative phase, or the phase two, following the tactical strategies, the downtown can then shift their attention towards shaping more physical and social characteristics of the downtown. So this phase of focus on creative placemaking is really focused around arts and cultural activities that might already exist downtown, but could use some amplification. So phase two is meant to introduce elements like activities, craft fairs, plaza-centric gathering spaces, music festivals, farmers markets, and cultural arts displays. And to go in and try to, with a little bit of vegetation and pathways, transform parklets or residual spaces that might already be in the downtown. This phase could also include the potential restoration and adaptive reuse of key historic buildings. So in this example, the students looked at Fraternal Hall is reimagined as a lively community anchor, featuring a concessions kitchen, a tap room, a historic theater event in the downstairs level, in the downstairs level, and a flexible studio up above for the arts, fairs, or other exhibitions. It was thought that by focusing energy and activity at the corner of Chestnut and Second, that this project could become a catalyst for a broader revitalization downtown right at that corner. So following the momentum of phase 1, 2, and 3, phase 3 focuses on more ambitious and transformative projects, things that add program, build new structures. So this stage introduces strategic placemaking, larger scale proposals that reshape infrastructure and support long-term community growth. Aspects of strategic placemaking include things like adding larger vegetation, new trails, which the students were fascinated by these, not the alleyways, but these small kind of slips between buildings that could become part of that new trail system. Starting to look at the possibility of funding and getting the ownership participation and remodeling the storefronts, adaptive reuse of buildings, full-scale additions, and housing developments. So one example of reimagining of the Fraternal Hall alleyway is transforming a possibly overlooked space or possibly underused space into a vibrant connector as part of this downtown trail system, which connects not only the sidewalks, but some of the green spaces behind the street here to the back street and beyond. So the final phase envisioned the development of centralized residential opportunities. So here again at the corner of Chestnut and Second, which was determined to be a good opportunity for development, or the focus of development and density, which is across from the Fraternal Hall and in front of the corner parklet. A downtown housing development could have a robust impact and help invigorate the street between the parklet and Fraternal Hall. This concept imagines a mixed-use residential development that forms a small urban village that's centered around a kind of shared courtyard tucked in just off the alleyway. So while a project like this would obviously require significant investment or an interested developer, the purpose of a vision like this and others like it is to really spark ideas, highlight what could be possible, and identify strategic locations that might have a focus for redevelopment. So we just want to thank you for welcoming us and our students to your community. Both as students and instructors, we really appreciate the chance to connect with you. And many of the students left feeling inspired to keep working with rural towns like yours in the future. The projects you see today are rooted in what we heard from you, in what Nate showed earlier, those kind of participatory activities, your stories, your feedback, and your hopes for Kimball. We wish we'd had a chance to interact more, to kind of hone what we heard and work those into the visions. But all of these, they aren't final plans, but they do offer possibilities, ideas of what future projects could hold. And we've started to, we've shared this work with the city, as Nate mentioned, and we're happy to provide a whole printed booklet. I think the booklet we shared with the city was part of the process. But we'd be happy to share the sort of project visions as part of that booklet if they're interested and you're interested. We know it can take time like these for ideas like these to evolve. And in some towns, the process leads to future visits, sometimes exploring other sites or testing different directions to help refine a vision. So as always, we encourage you to keep sharing this work with neighbors, with developers, with other people in the city if we leave a booklet with the City Hall, and anyone who it might be helpful or inspirational to. So just, again, thanks for having us. And yeah, if there's any questions about the work or the sort of possibilities that come from it, we could take questions, or maybe that's just something that comes about from a future or additional conversation.
Thank you very much, very interesting and it should get us to thinking about things we haven't been thinking about before. There's some very good ideas in there that I could see, especially I have a space in my heart for the Uyghurs. I'd like to see something happen there. So.
Yeah, it's amazing building.
Council, any questions?
No, I thought it was awesome to look at.
So please share that information and hopefully we can build upon it.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Creative plans. Sorry, that factors. Nice.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, discuss and approve loan advisory's recommendation for a 15% forgiveness for the Sagebrush Don Mosier. Don called me and she said she wouldn't be able to come tonight. They're shorthanded and they were busy, but they would like that. That's part of the agreement. They paid their loan on time. And part of the agreement says that if you do that, the 15% forgiveness.
Correct. Loan advisory met last week. Their original loan amount was $60,000. The Sagebrush has made on-time payments every month for almost 60 months now. It'll be 59 months on time. So the 50% forgiveness off of their loan per the loan agreement will be $9,000. And the loan advisory committee suggests approval by city council.
That's a good idea. I do have a motion for that.
So moved.
A second? Second. Please vote.
Okay, we have all ayes. Motion carries.
Okay, next item on the agenda is what we discussed at the last meeting, discuss and approve matching funds for a zero fare summer program with KCTS for Kimball residents. Christie, you want to talk again?
Yeah, actually, I just want to first say that I'm actually going to be withdrawing my request at this time. We received information from NDOT that they'll be reducing every transit across the state's budgets by 30%. And so before we make any commitments to any other partners, we want to make sure that we can perform what we say we will, which we're currently performing. We've got our local Kimball routes out, and we sent these on with the kiddos. We've been around to the different places in town to put them out. I did want to just provide you some additional information. However, a couple of questions that were asked along the way. I just wanted to clarify fares versus matching funds. Our request was for matching funds, not for fares. So that is very different types of funding in the moment. So when you talk about the number of riders and their fares versus a match, I just wanted to clarify that. I do think as we talked to some of the council members, there maybe was not good communication on that. One of the questions was asked on how many Kimball people ride. And so we did pull that report. It's 858 individuals that have a Kimball address rode with us in the last 12 months. Now that does include people from, the motels because we have to pull their by address. So, those Kimball addresses. So there are a few that are temporary residents and not permanent residents, but that is, a considerable amount of individual people. We also took 21,037 rides so far this fiscal year for Kimballites. So just wanted to kind of give those numbers so that people understand, the amount of usage that our in-town bus does use. The routes the actual official route starts next Monday, now that school's out. And it is the most efficient way. So we are still offering free rides for those who've never ridden. And if they're nervous about it, just to see how it goes, we definitely will send somebody to ride with them if that's what needs to happen. But it is more efficient than the way we do it on demand. So anyway, any questions? I would love to.
Will you still be providing the free rides for summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just got one question.
Yep. I think it'll be, Austin mentioned it, and we're 100% on board to talk to you guys as a budget line item as that comes around. And I think that that'll, be a conversation that just takes a little longer than taking up everybody's time tonight. So you'll see us again, I'm sure, during that budget season. So
that would work better for us.
Right? I know it. Everybody's got to do what they need to do, right? So.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discuss and consider interlocal agreement with Village of Potter for building official duties. Annette, you want to fill us in on that?
The Village of Potter reached out to us. They're small, so they don't have a whole lot going on, but they do not have a building inspector. And they requested an interlocal agreement with us to borrow Rod on a as needed basis. So the agreement that you have in front of you was put together originally by Village of Potter. It was tweaked a little bit with suggestions from myself and Matt Truman, and went back to the Village of Potter. They've agreed to it. So what you'll see in there is basically a limited use of Rod, when and if they should need him. The majority of what is going to come across is building permits that he could just about handle for the most part over email. Just review some plans. Should he have to go out to Potter, they will pay for trip charges and his time. So we're probably looking at 3 to 4 a year. That he will not be doing abatements, no property issues as far as condemned properties or unsafe properties, strictly new or addition building permits. And again, it's been discussed in quite at length with myself and Rod, and we're pretty comfortable with it.
That's all. I've discussed some with some of the Potter officials. That's all they're looking for. They don't want it. So, I basically look at building permits. Motion is interlocal.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I mean, there's indemnification language to protect you in case something goes south. And if for some reason Rod gets sick or cannot continue in his role, the contract would automatically cancel. You wouldn't be obligated to find somebody to do the work for them. So there's some good protections for the city built in there.
Agreed. I know our fellow that's doing the building official all the duties retired. Now he's with us. Is he going to be okay driving back and forth to Potter, I think?
He is. It's really not that far. And again, if it's just a couple times a year, I don't think they have any
Okay.
that they will cover the mileage and gas and his time, which will help with his salary here.
And most of the time, they can be done by fax or
even better. Okay.
Yes, most of what they're looking for is actual original plan review, and then possibly an occasional footing inspection or what have you. So
Cool. All right. Make a motion we approve the agreement.
for a second.
excellent.
Please vote.
We have all ayes, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is updates on the wastewater treatment plant construction.
Can you hear me okay, Doug? You'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you now. You're on.
All right, good. I'll try to keep my portion here fairly short tonight. I just wanted to give you an update on what's going on out at the treatment plant, how things are moving along, and then the next bullet point as well is also associated with that on your agenda here. So basically, what's been going on out there is mostly demolition of the existing site. They've taken out the sidewalk around the facility. They've excavated the hole where the new building is going to go. Took care of some other minor ancillary items around the site. Just today, just this afternoon, a couple hours ago, they did get started with pouring the new channel for the wastewater in the basement of the building. So that is moving forward. Not a whole lot to report this month, but there has been some progress out there. It is starting to move along. Like I said, they're just getting started. We got a long ways to go, but it is underway, which it's good to see. So I was out there last week, took a look through things, and by and large, it's moving along pretty well. There have been a few minor changes to the project that we weren't expecting. We found a pipe that might be leaking coming out of the aeration channel. We've been working with the contractor on that. Going to get that taken care of. There's a pipe, the final influent pipe into the plant might need to be lined at some point here in the near future, but I think we're just going to put that on your annual lining program to get that done later, just to not hold up the contractor on the treatment plant side of things. And the pipe's not in terrible shape. It can use lining. So I think those are the two major changes that we've had right now. Like I said, it's otherwise just moving along bit by bit. So I will probably be attending every council meeting for the next several months, at least through the construction season. So I'll come in every month and give you the update. So
Thank you, Doug.
Any questions on the status, or otherwise, there's a first pay app from the contractor in front of you, $134,000. And I will say the bulk of that, it seems like a lot of money when I was first looking at it compared to what they've done out there. The bulk of that is them getting their bonds and their insurance in place, or about half of that is bonds and insurance. Another big chunk of that was them getting their construction office on site, just getting materials, equipment, that sort of thing to the site. So those are the two real big items. And then the start of the excavation, rebar is on there as well. So.
Thank you, Doug. Council, questions?
No.
Is there a motion to approve that, Bill?
Make that motion.
Is there a second? Second. Please vote. Okay.
All ayes, motion carries.
Thank you, Doug. I think you're all taken care of for this.
All right. Thank you. I will see you again next month.
All right.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, next item on the agenda, the discussion on alcohol sales in City Park in conjunction with SDL and State Liquor Commission regulations, currents, liability waiver, and require. I guess, Annette, you want to kind of give us the background on that?
I will do my best. If legal attorney wants to take over, yeah, if I say it wrong. So we have a request this year for the first annual Kimball Community Party in the Park or celebration, and Jay is here with Kimball FM to add to that. But we have a request at this time to have a party in the park that allows for a beer garden. State statute is run through the Liquor Commission and does not allow the sale of alcohol or alcohol on public properties to include parks and city owned areas unless specifically approved by council. So that is what we're going to be discussing tonight. The event is put on by Kimball FM. They're looking at a 4:30 to 10 p.m. event. At 4:30, they're requesting a beer garden for 4:30 to 10. In front of you, you'll have some maps. There is not a special designated license that is filed with the city or the state as of yet. The state, of course, has to approve that. So technically, it'll along with that, we're going to have live music. They're also going to pay for entry into the booth for the day. And at 8 o'clock, they're going to start a movie in the park in conjunction with the library for the kids. So what we're discussing tonight is that particular beer garden, which I understand will be hosted and ran by Beer Money, but under their liquor license, and whether or not the city would choose to do so at Gaudi Park for this event, and if so, what conditions would you like to place them on? Instead of what the state may put them on. The state will have their own requirements and regulations. Did I miss anything else?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. And there is a local recommendation application that they need to complete and bring for city council to approve, and that gets forwarded to the state, and the state will then lay whatever additional requirements that they have on it. So it's going to be a lot of the same information that you have on this park usage agreement in front of you, and there'll be a diagram that's required to be provided as well. So I assume that will be something we'll have to take up at the next meeting. And then, so I guess for purpose of tonight, if you wanted to make a motion, you could approve the park usage agreement and the diagram, but we'll have to come back and do the liquor part of it separately.
We do not have a park usage pool agreement right now, right? Is that what we're approving?
the pool liability waiver is a different agenda item for something different.
And this is, again, so if you look at your park usage agreement, one of the terms there is user agrees that no alcoholic beverages will be consumed. So this is not something that you typically do as a city. So I think the idea is, from a 10,000 foot view, are you okay with making this exception now and probably moving forward, that you would allow something like staff on city property? And if you are, that's perfectly fine. It's just, I think staff, we would just recommend that there be liability insurance and probably an indemnification agreement that just says if something goes awry, the city's not going to be responsible.
And just for historical knowledge, this is something that's happened before. Mm-hmm. We had a fundraiser for the Farmers Day, and we did the same thing in the park. We had a beer garden. I don't think we had to go through all the hoops. I think we just.
And it ran very smoothly.
Yes.
So I don't see liquor sales being a problem. We've done this thing before.
Yeah, and if they do it at the Bear, which is just right across the fence.
Right.
So, but Chief, what do you think?
So personally, if there's alcohol involved, I'm not taking my family to it. My concern with alcohol consumption is it going to stay secluded to that area, or is it going to expand beyond that? So those are just some concerns of ours.
Legally, it has to stay in that area.
Where is the beer garden?
Do you have any idea, Jay? Are you that far along in your plan?
There should be a map. But where is it in representation to where the movie is for the kids?
It will be adjacent.
It would be right here.
The movie would be in front of the stage on your map.
Yeah.
And then,
So yeah, I don't love that. Personally.
Suggestions are welcome. And we're still in the planning stages and we can change that. I can't speak to the SDL because I'm not the liquor license holder, but we can certainly change where we put it in the park if that's the only hang up.
Yeah.
So tonight we're not really addressing that issue yet, right?
Not specifically. I just think it would be good. They need to know for planning purposes if you are supportive of it or not. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we can give them some idea whether you're supportive or not tonight, that will be very helpful for them on the liquor part of it. Otherwise, if you want to move forward with the park usage, I'm comfortable with you moving forward on that part tonight.
Yeah. And the movie's supposed to start at 8. Is that correct? When sun goes down, turn that down.
When the sun goes down as well. That will start at 7:30, preparing for it, and then it will play whenever she's ready.
Council?
I'm in favor of it. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm glad that they're not taking the time and effort to make a promotion that's good for the community. So I think we should work with them and see if we can make this work.
Oh, do we have a motion?
I would be in favor of an motion
for the park usage.
So I'll do the so move thing.
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
A second.
Okay. No more discussion. We'll have a vote.
So we have all ayes, motion carries. This is strictly for the park usage.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have to address the rest of it.
Yeah, that's correct. And then it
By then, submitted.
correct. And then if it's, if I don't want to overstep the council, if I work on just a simple indemnity agreement and then encourage them to start working on the insurance side of things, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Just to kind of get things moving between now and next
Get all that, Jay.
Talk to you. That's okay.
We will get you that information.
TBD.
All right. Next item on the agenda, discuss and approve the bid for a concrete base at City Park Playground.
Okay, so this is a continuation and finalization of our upgrades to the city park. We do have those rubber tiles that still need to be installed. Unfortunately, weather started us quite quickly last fall, so we weren't able to use it. I know it was above most of the community. We do temporarily have the swings up at the park, just so everybody knows. We did go back in and put down a safety base of sand and gravel so that the park could be used throughout the winter on those dry days. So in moving forward and finalizing the plans for the ADA accessibility for that playground, we do need to put down our subgrade and our concrete base before installing rubber tiles, and it is fully ADA accessible. So what you have in front of you are 3 bids proposals for that base. One from Lowe's Landscaping for $27,950. We do have one from the contractor that is through Cunningham Recreation. Purchase the equipment from. They will be coming out of the Omaha area. They're a little bit higher at $30,700. And then we have another one through Base Contracting at $29,175. So this will be again for putting down that sub base and the concrete along with the mow strip and an ADA ramp to get onto that playground equipment. This is something that we've already discussed and was budgeted through our Keno funds for that. I will say that once this is completed, there is a grant through NDEP that I will be filing, and it will cover up to 50% of this. So we're looking at approximately $14,000 in grant funds coming back from this final base.
So all 3 bids are comparable?
They're comparable. Again, the Cunningham Rec. Yes, there's a few little minor details. So Cunningham Rec obviously is coming from Omaha. So it was an average 4% increase. That is not an absolute on that 3287. The only difference besides price between Hayes and Boyce that I noticed is with Hayes, it excludes any dirt and gravel packing and assisting with there. That's all supplied by the city. Boyce Landscaping has included that and not having the city do that. So that is one of the bigger differences there.
Council?
Boyce is all inclusive. Hayes requires city assistance.
Make a motion to approve the proposal from Roy's Landscaping and Sprinkler Systems.
Sorry.
Okay.
We have all ayes, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, discuss and approve the pool waiver liability for the private rental use of the city pool. But I gotta hit it. So go back to that.
So, separate from the Kimball FM, we have other requests to rent out the pool for private use and private parties. So before we go ahead and start doing something like that, we should have some sort of release liability waiver in place. So what you have to do is what has determined to be best. We've also reached out to Alarm, thank you all for helping me with that, to make sure that we are within our city insurance policies guidelines for doing such a thing. So between Alarm and our city council, this is what we have in front of you for a new release liability waiver for private usage of the pool private party. We are a municipal pool, so regardless of them being used for private, we do have to have lifeguards ready. We have to have them for free, two on stand, one on rotation, one available. So no matter what, we will always have 4 lifeguards on duty. So when we get to the next step, as far as what you think that cost might be, I haven't put that in front of me because I haven't really thought about that. Before anything, we need to have this release in place.
Matt, can you speak to that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the top, the one that's entitled City of Kimball Release, that would be an individual waiver. So like for an individual that wanted to use the pool or a child for their parents to complete. The second release was provided by Alarm, and that's like for an organization who wants to rent out the whole pool as one big group. So one's a kind of a all encompassing and one's just something individual.
Okay. So do we have to have any sort of agreement for our lifeguards? Just so I guess in technicality, they're still working for us, but are they protected?
They would be, yeah, they would still be protected by our work comp and be city employees at the time that they're helping.
Any other comments?
Is this different than like what they do now? Like if somebody wanted to have a 1 hour birthday party, or is this now?
So this would make sure that, so the first one, like Matt said, the police liability would be like a private family event, like a small event. And then the other one through alarm would be, what we have requested is Clean Harbors would like to rent the pool for the day, but for all their employees for an all day long thing. So that's going to be quite people for a very long length of time. So that's where we've got these other ones that block.
400 people could fit in that pool.
Yeah, and I look back historically when this came up, and we rented, I think it was 2017, we found where we rented the pool for after hours for like a birthday party, but we really haven't had this request, and this hasn't been in place. So moving forward, since we have two now during the summer that are requesting usage of the pool, I thought we need to have something in place. So
the reason that it's important is, as a city, in general, you have sovereign immunity. And that the Recreation Liability Act says that if it's like a piece of park equipment, like a swing or anything that's just out there to be used for free,
It breaks or
as long as there's no charge to use it, you have sovereign immunity if anybody gets hurt.
Okay.
They're completely covered. But the moment that you charge a fee or rent something out, you waive sovereign immunity. So you can be sued just like any other company. And so it's important to have protection just like any other private party actor would have.
There could be no fees.
So that's the reason why we want to make sure you're just.
No, I was going to ask that question. What about fees?
Yeah.
You answered that one before I got to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's usually not worth it.
But I think overall, I think as long as we accept that and kind of work through some of the other issues, I think it's a good idea to have these in place and going forward, and
We have a
we got
motion,
coming up.
have a motion for that?
So do you want one for each one or together?
You can do them together.
Yeah, together.
Make a motion, we approve the two agreements for the limited liability waiver for the pool, waivers for the pool.
Okay, sure, so good.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
I'm an aye.
We have all ayes, motion carries. Your light is not working.
I jumped the gun too.
All right, last but not least, the really important part. Like the official swearing in of Police Officer Sergio Ring. Hello, everyone.
Repeat that for me. I, Sergio Tarango, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I, Sergio Tarango, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation or for purpose of evasion.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation or for purpose of evasion.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties as a police officer for the City of Kimball Police Department according to law and to the best of my ability.
And that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties as the police officer for the City of Kimball Police Department according to law and to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates to overthrow the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
And I do further swear that I do not advocate, nor am I a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
And that during such time as I am in this position, I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
And that during such time as I am in this position, I will not advocate nor become a member of any political party or organization that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States or of this state by force or violence.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Mom's the happiest person in here. I'm super happy as well. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Love you.
Oh, no. You gotta give Mom a hug. You can't shake Mom's hands. Come on.
Much better.
Right, we will go to reports. My report is going to be on my trip to Montgomery, Alabama for the National Security Forum. It was an honor, privilege to be invited again, and I think it was an honor for Kimball. I was the only Nebraskan there, and it was actually my second trip, and it's an unbelievable experience. As Craig, have you never been able to go? That's been able to go. You're with a group of 200 and some people from that are going through the Air Force War College. There are 45 foreign officers that are going through this Air Force War College. And then on the last week, they bring in civilians, and then we interact with the groups. We had 90 civilians there this year. And they keep you busy. They keep you very busy. It took a day to get down. I left on a Monday and got there by late afternoon. Tuesday morning, at 7:20, I was expected to load up for a bus. It took us to a cafe for breakfast. Then we go to the auditorium, and at the auditorium, we heard opening remarks from Colonel Buddy Lee, who is the commander of the Air Force War College. And then we listened to a keynote address from Mr. Edwin Oshiba, who is the performing the duties of Undersecretary of the Air Force. And then after that, we transitioned back to our session rooms. And after that, we had this nice photo, which you can't see very well. There's a nice photo that we got of all 90 of us here. And then we got a box lunch, and we went back to our seminar rooms and had the lunch. And then after lunch, we had went back to the auditorium and listened to Dr. Jared McKinney, who is an assistant professor at the Department of National Security Studies at the Air War College, and he spoke about the Pacific and the China challenge. And then after that, you go back to your seminar rooms and you talk about that. And then finally, by 4 o'clock, they let you go home or go back to your room, and you get an hour and 45 minutes. And then after that, then they bus you over to the commander's house, and you have a garden party. It starts at 6 and lasts till by 8. And then by then, I was ready to go crash in my room. And then we started Wednesday again at 7:50. This on Wednesday, we got a box of lunch, and we went to our seminary rooms to eat our lunch and talk. And then we got on a bus that took us out to the flight line. And on the flight line, there were several static displays of different planes and helicopters. They had A1 Warthog, interesting plane. And then we got to see a aerial demonstration of the F-22, which is a remarkable plane. It can make the tightest turns of any plane I've ever seen. That's a jet. It goes straight up, and then it can stop, and it can move very slowly across in front of you, or it can move very fast. And it is the most advanced jet in the world. It's 30 years old. So After that, we had a nice barbecue lunch at the hangar. And then they took us back to the auditorium and we listened to Dr. Mark Confrasino, who is the chief academic officer at the Air College, but he's retired, but he came back just to give this report. And he was on the Ukraine war and the Russia's challenge. And then we had a couple other seminars that weren't that, to be honest with you, weren't that interesting. One was about AI. So then we went back to seminar rooms and talked. And then again, we got about an hour and 45 minutes. And then we got to go out with our seminar groups to a restaurant and had some just personal times talking to those people, which is very, very interesting. They're all either colonels or light colonels and just interesting people. And then Thursday, the last day, we went to the Air War College, had breakfast from Chick-fil-A's, and then we had an address from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General David Alvin. Then we went back to the seminary room and discussed what he brought up, had a box of lunch. And then we went back and listened to the Space Force address, which was supposed to be Lieutenant General Douglas Scheiss, but he couldn't come, and I did not get the name of the person, but they talked to us about the Space Force, what is happening with the Space Force. And then we had farewell remark, went back to our seminar rooms, and we came back to the auditorium to listen to farewell remarks from Colonel Buddy Lee, who is the commander of the Air Force Air War College. And then we had, by that time it's 4:00 again, or 4:30, and they give us an hour and 45 minutes again. And then we got to go to a Rovino Ristorante, which is an Italian restaurant. And that was a good time because it's just the 90 of us that were at that restaurant. And there was about 6 of us at each table. And so we just were able to talk and talk about what things went on with us. And Friday morning, I got up and took the day getting home. So I really thank the city of Kimball for letting me go, and also just for the experience. And I think it's a good deal for the town. I think it shows that the Air Force, the Department of Defense, thinks Kimball is important to our country, and they want us to continue to be involved. So that's my report. So next report, we'll start. You have anything? Okay.
Unfortunately, we did not have an airport meeting. We'll try and play catch up next month.
Okay. I have no report. Okay. All right. Then after that, I think it is Annette.
I have a report. But on the utility side, power generation project is moving along quite quickly. The plan is to be up and running by June. It looks like we're going to hit that benchmark. So NMC will be working on the permit side. We still need to renew our contract with Maine for the generation payments. I did get an updated contract. There is no price in there, so that's for those monthly payments. So that is something that I'm going to be discussing with Maine. Bill will be in Kearney tomorrow and Thursday with me and NFPP for board meetings. So he is our assigned board member on that. I am the alternative. He's going to sit down with representatives while he's there. We had this discussion today, and he will discuss our next steps to start receiving generation payments once we're back online. We're going to start talking about what that payment looks like. We've been at the same generation payment earmark for a very long time. So given the energy crunch, look forward. So the sooner we get that back online, the faster we get those generation payments and more revenue in. So we're working on that. As you heard from Doug, wastewater treatment plant updates are moving forward. We are going to continue to have monthly meetings that include staff, engineers, and contractors on site. Already had one of those, so things are looking pretty good. We are beginning to get the parks back into play mode. The weather keeps changing on us, but we're trying summer mode. Dog park and walking trail this week have been cleared of weeds. This will be continued maintenance throughout the summer and the fall until the snow starts to fly again. We are down a staff member. We're working on that, so bear with us, but we are getting things where they need to be. I did mention that City Park, the swings are up again temporarily. Once we get started on that base, Roy's Landscaping get started on that, we're gonna have to take those swings down for safety purposes, make sure nobody goes out their place. They're required to have a 2-week cure time, so it's gonna take a full 2 weeks of cure time per the tile installer before they come out and lay those rubber tiles. So I understand everybody's itching to get out at the playground. So unfortunately, we're gonna have about 3 weeks there where it's just gonna take a little bit longer. And then once it's done, it'll be great. It will be ADA accessible. We'll be able to get a wheelchair on and what have you. So I think it's a beautiful plan. It's just gonna take a little bit longer. So please be patient with us and thank you very much for understanding. On the landfill, we have a new scale that was budgeted and approved. That's going to be installed next week. This is going to take, again, at least up to 3 weeks. The concrete pour just for that also has a very lengthy cure time of 2 to 3 weeks. That's just some electrical work. So once